I thought that it's in the public interest. People need to know that there are external interests that have some sort of a stake or some sort of an interest in the preservation of the energy poverty that Nigeria and West Africa have historically faced. Um, I don't believe that my going public with it in itself is going to change the world or anything like that. I don't think my profile is that powerful. However, I think that the power of public exposure is one of the last few real powers that regular people in this part of the world still have. I feel like a lot of the power that these foreign actors wield can be wielded because it's wielded in secret, because people don't even know that it exists. So prior to this incident, for example, if you were to come out and tell people that there are players in the global development space or the NGO space who would very much like the status quo to be preserved in terms of Africa being poor and Nigeria suffering from energy poverty, despite being one of the world's largest energy exporters, it will sound like it's a conspiracy theory. But here you have hard evidence of a Western NGO, UK NGO funded by American money, quietly moving around, trying to arrange the pieces on the chessboard to create a narrative war against what objectively, regardless of whatever one thinks about the owner of the refinery, objectively, that refinery, which by the way is also the largest single investment ever made in the history of West Africa, $20 billion. There's this narrative war against this refinery being fought essentially by white people in London and New York. And then they're trying to use an African face to be the spearhead of this narrative war. That does not sit right with me, and I thought the public needed to know.
And it makes one wonder whether, there's a link between this and why Nigeria's 4 refineries have refused to work for over 10 years now, over a decade now. Do you think that this is the MO of foreign entities to stop development, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole?
I mean, even before this happened, I happen to have quite close relationships with several people who work in and around the energy space. I myself work in the energy space, although in the sort of renewable part of the space. And one thing you will always hear is that getting funding for energy projects in Africa is almost impossible nowadays, because you will hear things like ESG, you hear things like energy transition, fossil fuels are bad. So basically, you're trying to get a pipeline constructed from Uganda, which recently discovered oil and gas reserves. So you're trying to get a pipeline constructed from Uganda through Tanzania to the port. So Uganda can actually benefit from its oil reserves. It can actually export oil and earn revenue to build infrastructure, right? Because most of Nigeria's infrastructure, for example, was built with oil revenue. Uganda doesn't have that infrastructure because they simply don't have the money. And now they have the opportunity to earn that money using their oil revenue. And then the financing to actually build the pipeline is being blocked because they are being told that you are not allowed to build any energy infrastructure that has to do with fossil fuel because of emissions. Meanwhile, Africa is responsible for 3.9% of global emissions. We don't register on the ranking. We might as well not exist. So what emissions are we cutting? We don't have anything to cut. You are looking at a starving man. His ribs are showing. This person is malnourished. He's about to drop dead. You're telling him that he needs to go to the gym and exercise and lose weight. That's what they're telling us. It makes no sense.
Yeah, this is what
this is not just this is a Pan-African phenomenon.
Right.
Prior to this, sorry.
So this is what Dialogue Earth said you should do in carrying out a spare campaign against the Dangote refinery. And I'm wondering, now you have been offered $500, you turned it down. Is there any chance that other journalists or other individuals or entities may have been approached by not just this Dialogue Earth, but by other foreign entities, to scuttle major projects in Nigeria?
Absolutely, 100%. First of all, with this particular instance, I'm pretty sure that I wasn't the only journalist that they would have reached out to. I'm quite sure, even though I can't prove that yet. But even in the aftermath of going public, they already sort of mobilized a narrative response. So I'm not going to mention the name of the news platform or the journalist involved, but there's already been that pushback where they've sponsored articles in two major Nigerian online news mediums and referred to what I did as sensationalist, that essentially it's not that big a deal, that I kind of misrepresented what was being done, and basically that I'm an attention seeker and I did it to, I don't know, to chase clout or something that is really not that big a deal. That's the narrative that they've mobilized, and they've sponsored it and put it on two Nigerian